Why is it that so many men, when they're at the top of their game, meaning they're at the top and peak of their success, end up feeling burnt out, empty, and unfulfilled? This is the hot topic that we are going to dive right into the center of the fire together. We're going to turn up the heat and we're going to explore this. And I'm welcoming back my distinguished guest, my friend, my partner, Luke Iorio. Welcome back, Luke.
David, good to be here. Looking forward to getting into this.
All right. Well, I know you know a lot about this topic because you've had your own personal experience of being at the top of your game, having a lot of success in your life, but yet feeling like, oh my God, I'm burnt out and there's a part of you that didn't feel fulfilled. So why don't you let us in a little bit and tell us about your journey with that, and then we'll explore why does this happen to other men?
All right, perfect. Let's just jump right on into the wounding. Perfect. The experience that I had was that I was very, very fortunate actually to find a career path for myself that was really aligned and I felt great about. It was in the field of coaching, so very much related to what we do today. And it was something that called to me because of just interest in personal and professional development that I had from very early in my career. And I had the opportunity when I was relatively young to join in one of the fastest growing coach training and certification companies in the industry. And this was very early on in the coaching industry. And we went on a wild ride. No other way to say it. For the next 17 years that I was there, it was incredible. I got to move through the organization in multiple positions. And then I actually became the president and CEO of the organization, taking over that position specifically for the founder who stayed on as chairman. And did that for a number of years. And it was about year 5 or so into that process where all of a sudden I was displaying kind of like all the classic signs of burnout, meaning I was irritable, I was getting short-tempered, I was just constantly stressed, I was sleeping like just terribly at that point in my life. Admittedly, I was picking up a drink way too easily at that stage, at least for about a 6-month period in that period of time. I was no
Was
longer
there a
satisfied.
wife or kids at this point?
Yes. So I'm married with kids at that point. My kids were, I guess, at that particular stage. My daughter was not yet a teenager, so probably about 11 or 12, which would have made my son 8 or 9 at about that stage. So kids are at home. My wife was still at home. She was not back to work yet. She was still helping out with our youngest kid and with Jake. And so life from the outside looking in was like, here's a guy in his late 30s who is the CEO of a very fast growing company that's very reputable. We actually became one of the largest coach training companies in the world, and with one of the top reputations. It was purpose driven. We were, helping people enter into a profession that was deeply aligned around their calling, and that was having a ripple effect to change the lives of clients they were working with. I had the nice house, the fenced in yard, obviously the kids, the wife. I even had the rescue dogs. Like, check all the boxes, right? And yet I was stressed and burning out in all sorts of incredible ways. And when I went through that process and realized, and even turned to my partners and indicated, I'm going to have to step down at some point. Like we had to go through a major re-engineering, and I don't want to get into the details of that, but it was like, after we get through that, I don't know if there's going to be any blood left in this stone. Like I'm running on empty. And as I started to go further into it, and obviously with the benefit of hindsight, it wasn't simply because of how hard I was working in the sense of long hours and big projects and that kind of stress. Yes, that was part of it, but that wasn't the real reason that things were going on. It was that I was getting to a point where I was effectively getting crosswise with myself, meaning I was out of alignment with the fact that I was now changing. So what do I mean by that? I had gotten to a point where I checked the box, not only on the material stuff that I was describing before, but also a lot of what I thought was my purpose to be a CEO, to be in an entrepreneurial company, to, create a position that had good status and felt like I was giving of some of my gifts. And yet
While making
that
lots of money.
while making lots of money and being very successful in the process. And all of a sudden that no longer worked. Like it was not filling me up inside anymore. Why? Because that was all external validation. It was all stuff that I was doing outside of myself that, while purposeful, while meaningful, while beneficial and everything else, it was really only addressing a small part of who I actually was. which was somebody who was becoming less driven by the milestones, meaning the next level of revenue, the next level of income, the next growth market, the next extra students that we could train. I was becoming significantly less motivated by those stats. And I wanted a life that was much more intimate, that was more relationship driven, that was more connection driven. And I think that's what I ultimately stumbled on was I really was not connected more deeply to myself. What now mattered most in my life around my family and the free time I wanted to have with them and the experiences I wanted to create with them. I was no longer oriented around bringing out what I felt like was more my unique nature and gifts. And instead, I was playing this very, very defined role of what it meant to be a CEO or a business leader. So it felt like I was living very fragmented in who I was. And com- combine that, which I think is true for a lot of men in the professional arena, the more successful you become, you begin to tell yourself this story that you can't then open up to others. Because it's like, as soon as I do that, my image is going to crumble. And who is it that I can really go to that's going to understand my circumstance? That's a really, really common one for like entrepreneurs and top level executives is like, but most people aren't in my situation. They're not in my business. They're not in my circumstance. They don't know the pressures that I'm under. And so I start telling myself all these stories and it just isolates me, disconnects me even further, both from myself and from others who could support me in some way. And the last of it, which I wouldn't discover for years as to what was going on, I had virtually no level of spiritual connection in my life at that point as well. And
What do you mean
that
by that? Just so our listeners can understand
so
what you mean by that word.
yeah, so I don't specifically mean any religion, although that might be you. Like that might be your orientation towards whatever is spiritual. That might be your path. For me, it felt like I had no relationship with what today I would call creator. It felt like I had no relationship with something bigger than myself that felt like is like the energy behind life. I was missing that. And so, not surprisingly, if you're missing that, you tend to miss that connection in yourself too. You don't recognize the life that's within you. And so, I was missing spiritual connection. I was missing connection with myself. And because of the stories I was telling myself, I was withdrawing from connection with others as well. And that even stemmed from not feeling like I could fully express myself to my wife. And that could be any number of reasons. One was, again, part of the story is I don't want to burden her with this. This is mine. I have to deal with it. I'm the provider. I can't dump this on her. And at the same time, she saw I was completely miserable. I mean, she knew what was going on. She could see it.
And so many men do that, Luke. They disappear into the bat cave. They go into the garage. They go into the basement. They think this problem is my problem. I'm not coming out until I have it solved, until I have it fixed. And
Yep.
I don't want to be weak and be soft and burden anybody with this problem. Not to mention there could be an invisible part of it where I feel
Yeah.
embarrassed to even share that I have this problem
Absolutely.
because most people see me as a man of conviction, a man of certainty, a man of power, and God forbid I should give up that image. So I got to get this handled. I got to get this fixed.
That's it. And we turn around and we start putting on this mask of I'm fine. I if you were to ask anybody for probably a 20-year period of my life, of my adult life, even actually probably stemming in from high school, calm, cool, and collected were three words you would regularly hear about me. Nobody knew that I was crapping my pants half the time. That I was, I had tremendous, questions of my own confidence. I had tremendous self doubt. I dealt with social anxieties. I would just withdraw completely into myself. And it would look like, oh, wow, Luke knows kind of how to keep himself together. And even when he's working through stuff, he's working through it and he can handle it. And it was just part of a mask that I was wearing. And I
And
needed
Luke,
to,
if I may,
yeah,
the investment in energy in
well,
protecting that identity, like when we talk about,
it's
today's topic of
exhausting.
burnout, there's your burnout. It's like I'm so invested in trying to sell to others that this is how I am. God forbid they should know what's really going on the inside. And so the protection of that identity, the protection of keeping wearing those masks of calm, cool, and collected, like something's got to give here because I
Yeah.
am going to burn out, which for most men, by the way, burnout might mean I'm going to collapse. Burnout might mean I'm going to have a heart attack. Burnout might mean I'm going to get sick, whether it's a stroke or cancer. I'm not jumping off a bridge, although some guys think about that. I'm not taking my life, but something's got to give here. And what we're up against as men, and this is what you and I are so passionate about supporting other
Yeah.
men with, is why we're hosting the events that we host for helping guys just, hey, let's take off your mask. No more pretending, no more hiding. Time to be vulnerable, time to be real, time to be raw, time to be honest. Let's get to it and stop pretending because that investment of bound up energy is going to implode. And it's going to
100%.
implode and then it's going to explode, which means it's going to be a divorce or it's going to be a health problem. Something's got to give here. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to
You're
infuse that into the
you're
space.
spot on because it was absolutely exhausting. That was a big piece of the burnout, right? Was that I had so much bound up energy from unexpressed, unacknowledged emotions that were actually going on inside of me. And I was just trying to like repress, hold that back, depress all these things, which, you repress long enough, it becomes depression. And that's what it was steering me towards. Now it was situational in terms of some of the depression that I was in and out of for a period
And
of
that's
time.
cultural for men.
Cultural for
No
men.
one
We're
says,
not.
hey, by the way, express. Like, get with your rage, get with your frustration, get with your anger, get with your discontent, get with feeling over. No,
No,
nobody's like advertising, hey, this is normal for a man. So we just
completely.
keep it inside.
We feel like we're not allowed to express any of those things. So that's number one, is that it's all repressing. The second part of it, which you've been teaching this, is part of the formula for Men on Fire for a long time, is that when you don't allow yourself to access your emotions, you have no freaking leverage for change. And so it was like I wanted life to be different, but I wasn't fueling any aspect of what was going to give me the impetus to actually make the changes that I needed to make. And so for me, I mean, without going into the whole story, the leverage came because after I attended the fourth funeral in a year that I went through, and the last one was a role model of mine that I had growing up, it came to a head because my emotions collapsed me on my bathroom floor until I was staring, ultimately, after picking myself back up, staring at myself in the mirror and getting angry, rageful as hell, and just laying into myself in this mirror, only to walk away laughing, realizing that anything you yell into a mirror is coming back to you. And it was, I had to go through you,
You.
right? Why did you leave me? Was part of the questions, and because it was something I was trying to access, and that I connected to in that moment myself. But I had to go through such a moment of literal breakdown. And then I had to step away from what I was doing within the relative near term of the next about 12 months of extricating myself from the position that I had put myself in. And meanwhile, doing that while I'm in my late 30s, having thought that I had accomplished the absolute pinnacle of what I was after, and assuming that I was supposed to be in that position for another 10 or 20 years. And now all of a sudden it's like, it's not going to happen. And you're going to have to pull yourself out of this because it ain't working anymore. So you wait for these moments. And it's one, you and I have talked about this. It's painful to me to watch other men go wait for the crisis, the breakdown, the divorce, the whatever, the health crisis, which I also was headed towards, waiting for that to happen before we make changes. And yet, whether it's in the events, in the immersion rooms that we have, whether it's the men's circles that I've been running for years, the number of times when a man finally opens up and you see multiple other men go, "You're not alone, brother. I've been through that, or I've gone through that, or I am going through that." And then all of a sudden, you just feel this weight of like, it drops away because you feel like you're being seen and you're being understood in ways that only another man can actually see you and understand. And so for me, that was actually the beginning of some of the turning points. So without going into the whole journey, I intentionally put myself into programs that were going to begin to have me face my emotional state so that I could better learn what was going on in here and not just attach a thought to it. I could actually feel it because feeling it allowed connection again. That opened me up to spaces that were more compassionate, more empathetic. That opened me up to working in circles, in groups that all of a sudden I recognized, whether it was with men or whether it was a co-ed group, recognizing I'm not alone with what I'm going through. Other people actually do this too, and opening up about it. People didn't run for the hills. Instead, actually, they leaned in and said, "Tell us more. How can we support you?" And going through that whole process ultimately led me full circle back into spiritual connection, meaning back into a relationship with what I would, I call creator. I had to go through that journey of opening back up because I didn't realize I was the one blocking connection at that deeper level. I remember describing, I've been blessed. I've got these extraordinary friends, um, some of whom, quite a few of them I've known since high school. 7 or 8 guys that we all went to high school together and somehow have stayed in touch through all the years and get together all the time. Very blessed with that. And I could walk into the middle of a party with any of them, and for that couple of year period, never felt so alone because I couldn't open up. I couldn't express what was going on. And then all of a sudden, I started doing it. I started in little tiny ways, taking a little risk here and there. And all of a sudden, it was just that connection just started pouring back in ways that I never could have anticipated. And then that led me to bring that part of myself into my work differently. That ultimately, when I did exit the company that I was with, I took some time to go even deeper into my own discovery work. And it was some of that journey that ultimately led me to back to our relationship and to Man on Fire and to joining you here. And it all stemmed from the willingness to look at the masks, the willingness to start to feel what I needed to feel, the willingness to start to open up and actually share what was going on, the willingness to just put myself in some really freaking uncomfortable situations, and the willingness to do it with others.
It's really beautiful, Luke. Number one, I just want to honor you for that courageous journey. And, the sad part is that most men don't go this route.
No.
Most men, when they're at that crossroads of feeling the burnout, feeling empty, feeling unfulfilled, they do bottle it up. They do actually go even deeper into work, which is really a form of pain management. It's no different than a glass of wine to take the edge off, or smoking
Yep.
weed, or having an affair, or going to a strip club. They don't let their family in. They don't let their wife in. So she's feeling like, I don't trust this guy. I can't feel him. He can't feel me. He's always in his head. The kids feel a little disconnected, or when you are at their events, you're not really there. You're really on your phone. You're really in your business. And so this is what drives you and I, and the team to do what we do, which is to let men know, if you're feeling unfulfilled, you've achieved it. Like, you got to the mountaintop. You made the money that you wanted to make. You got the position in the company you wanted to make. Well, why are you feeling the burnout? Why are you feeling unfulfilled? This is exactly what we're speaking to, is
Yeah.
that there's probably a deficit in your spirituality, your connection to a power greater than yourself. There's probably a deficit in you being able to really tune into your own intuition and follow your heart and trust your instinct, because there's a terror that if I were to do that, then I might lose everything, right? Like one of
Yeah.
our guys we've been serving for over 5 years, Michael, in the community, he left the hospital after his second kid was born within an hour, getting back to work. And the guy, makes over $100 million a year. Why did he do that? There's a terror that if I don't run to work, the company can fall apart, and then I'm nothing. I'm nobody. And my
Yeah.
family will hate me. I'll be a loser. I'll be living on the streets and homeless. Like, these are unconscious patterns that we've inherited from our father, from our father's
Yes.
fathers, and we're carrying it. And so when we say, well, why do men burn out? Why do they feel empty? Why do they feel unfulfilled? They never really got with some of those emotions. They never developed their spirituality. They never took off the masks in the terror that
Yeah.
family would abandon them if they were to really speak the truth and go after their true dreams. And so we're here and we're passionate about holding space for men, a sacred space, a safe space,
Yeah.
rites of passage, initiations for men to go through. Say, brother, you're in a safe place right now to take down those masks,
Yeah.
to let the wall come crumbling down, and let us in, and let your family in, let your soul in, let your spirit in, let God in, because that is how you win the game of not feeling burned out. It's called the life of authenticity.
Yeah. And it is, it's a journey that I didn't realize that there were pathways that would have made this a hell of a lot easier for me to do, because when I was going through it, a lot of what has become the kind of the modern uh, men's personal development movement that really is only, honestly, even though I know obviously Men on Fire is going on its 11th year right now, it was one of the earliers in this space. It's only really kind of caught fire, so to speak, meaning the movement for men to kind of reclaim this for themselves in, I'd say, the last 5 years or so. That pathway wasn't clear to me. And at the time, and again, listen, there is a time and a place for things like therapy, but that wasn't what I needed. I needed a very, very different path that would allow me to start to access these parts of myself that would get me back into a deeper level of connection with my body, with my emotions, with my heart, with my soul. And really difficult to do when you don't have a group of men around you. Interestingly enough, I had actually worked with men's groups and specifically masterminds that I was doing when I was like right out of college. And I don't mean like going and signing up for a coach's mastermind. I mean putting my own group of 5, 6 guys together and us forming a way of holding each other accountable to the growth that we wanted in our lives. Well, when I burnt out, I didn't have it. It was missing from my life for probably about a 6-year period. And it was when I started to rediscover the importance of not only doing this work with others who have figured this out, who could show me how do you open back up again? How do you reconnect again? How do you really understand what actually matters to you? Meaning get past the stories that your father gave you and your mother gave you and your grandfather and your grandmother gave you and work gave you and society gives you. Get beneath all of that to find out what uniquely actually matters to you and the way you want to show up and give to the world. You need to do all of that, and to do that with a group of men who are going through similar initiations and rites of passage, so to speak, of growing into new stages in our lives was vital. And so I was fortunate that I found my way into those types of groups, some that were co-ed, several that were men only, but I stumbled my way there. I didn't know that people like Man on Fire were coming to be at that time, right? And so it is a pathway that now exists. And
Yeah.
it's as I talk to both, friends and family and colleagues and everything else, don't wait for the crisis to come. We can be proactive and think of it more as wherever you are in life, unless you are at a place where you are like a 12 on a scale of 10, right? Of how magnificent you feel life is going and how aligned life feels and how congruent and how connected you are. If you're anything shy of that, to be able to take a look at, I want to create a life for myself and a life that my wife and my kids just adore and can be proud of, that we have created and I have been part of creating with them. And we can start moving and orienting ourselves towards that, towards what we want to create in our lives, like we've tried to do with our careers and our businesses. We can do that in our lives. We're proactive in business. We're proactive in our careers. Why aren't we proactive in our lives? We can be.
Yeah. And we can dive into this more in future podcasts because, and I'll kind of end it on this note, and then if you have any final thoughts, just go for it. But we kind of addressed it, but we didn't really go deeper into it, where most men, they probably have an unconscious belief. And I'll say that I've absolutely had this. In fact, I just had this conversation with my wife literally last night, that a lot of men believe that for me to be successful in business and provide in the way I want to provide for the family, I might have to do that at the expense of hurting our relationship,
Yep.
because I don't know how to juggle both balls in the air at the same time. And so it's like a man will choose work or his mission over his family. And, one of our clients, another Michael, had shared, when it comes to accomplishments, achievements, awards, plaques, trophies, I win the gold medal, right? He has planes and
Yeah.
boats and houses and you name it. His family's taken care of 2 generations deep. But he said, well, but when it comes to the human side of life, the relationships, I don't even have a bronze. And he's like, I want to have the gold in that area of my life as well. So I think it would be great for us to dive into, how do we have it all? How do we
Yeah.
have it all without feeling like we're sacrificing?
Yeah.
And we can feel where we're not burnt out, and we're actually being fulfilled because we have a beautiful balance in
Yes.
these different domains of our life, which is what we're passionate about, helping men in marriage, with families, in their career, in their mission, in their purpose, in their health, because right, why have any of that if you don't have your health? This is what we're so passionate about, helping men with. So Luke,
Yeah.
let me know if you have any last thoughts.
The only thing I'm going to drop in there, because I very much want to get into the rest of that conversation when we're ready, is that you mentioned that word balance. And the one thing that I wanted to leave everybody with, because it's so crucial to creating the life that you just described, I used to think of balance as kind of like Lady Justice, balancing the scales in every which direction. And then I finally had the realization that the balance that I want in my life is actually more like a surfer, meaning someone who can go with the different waves that are going to crash all around us in life and know how it is that I'm going to enjoy and have a ride of a lifetime, no matter which way life is breaking. Because there's times where life is going to ebb, there's times where it's going to flow. And how can we be with it the entire time? That's the balance and the integration that I want.
Absolutely. You think about in a hospital, unfortunately, when the line is balanced, that means the person
Yeah.
flatlined. So we don't want
Yeah.
that type of balance. We want the feeling of being alive and riding
Yeah.
the wave of life balance. All right,
Yeah.
Luke, this was an awesome conversation. Guys that tuned into this podcast, put into the chat for us, what did you get from what we just shared? Can you identify where you might be feeling burnout? You might be feeling empty and unfulfilled, and share with us, what have you done up until this point? How have you been handling that? And let us know if you want support. We'd be happy to support you. We got lots of events to support our fellow brothers so that you're not alone, and you can feel held, and you can feel supported and challenged, and really seen for who you truly are. Guys, we love you so much. Here's to you rising with passion, with power, and a deeper sense of purpose. It is David Mailer, the Man on Fire Mentor, and Luke Iorio. If you like what you're seeing and hearing, then hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you'll know the next episode has dropped.